New York State Racing Parimutuel Wagering Reading Law Section 102 provides that the New York State Gaming Commission shall consist of 7 members appointed by the governor by and with the advice and consent of the Senate. 6 members having been confirmed by the New York State Senate affords the commission an ability to establish a quorum and undertake action. This present meeting of the commission is now called to order. Ms. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
John Crotty.
Here.
Mark Aaron. Peter Machete.
Here.
John Plemba.
Here.
Barry Sample.
Here.
Todd Snyder.
Here.
Ms. Secretary, please have the record reflect that a quorum of qualified members are present, thus enabling the transaction of business. Given an absence of Chairman Guerin, would the members like to designate a member for the purpose of presiding over today's meeting?
I nominate John Crotty. Second.
Vote on that?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Crotty, the floor is yours.
Thank you, gentlemen, once again. The first item up is the minutes of the commission meeting conducted last time, April 27th of 2015, have been provided to the members in advance. At this time, I'd like to ask, are there any edits, corrections, or amendments from any of the members? Madam Secretary, please reflect the minutes were adopted unanimously. The report of the acting director. Well, aren't you now the full-time
that's
executive
all.
director?
Yeah, I am.
So, next up is the report of the executive director. Even better, Rob.
I have 4 items of interest to talk about today. The first is that the initial Let's Start the Conversation Problem Gambling Awareness event, which is a hybrid town hall meeting and exposition, was conducted on May 14th at Rochester's Monroe Community College. The event was attended by representatives of Lago Resort and Casino, Finger Lakes Gaming and Racetrack, Batavia Downs, Buffalo Raceway, Western OTB, the Seneca Gaming Authority, and many regional problem gambling treatment providers. The next event is scheduled for June 17th at 10 a.m. at Schenectady County Community College, and if anyone has any availability or is in the area, we'd be happy to have you stop by. As you're all aware, the Triple Crown is again on the line at this year's Belmont Stakes, where American Pharoah will be seeking to become the first horse since affirmed in 1978 to emerge with the crown. The Belmont Stakes is, however, only one component of NYRA's inaugural Belmont Stakes Racing Festival. The festival encompasses 3 days of racing featuring 17 stakes worth more than $10 million in purses. While the 147th running of the Grade 1 Belmont Stakes is the primary event, as with last year's Belmont Racing, this will be the finest day outside of the Breeders' Cup, as 5 other Grade 1 events will be contested. The Metropolitan Handicap, the Manhattan, the Ogden Phipps, the Acorn, and the Longines Just a Game. Additionally, the Grade 2 Woody Stevens, Grade 2 Brooklyn Invitational, and Grade 3 Jaipur Invitational, and the Grade 3 Easy Goer will also be conducted on that day. In addition to the racing, NYRA announced that the 2015 Belmont Stakes Racing Festival will include headline performances by OAR on Friday and the Goo Goo Dolls on Belmont Stakes Day. The commission, as it does with all Grade 1 stakes with purses of $1 million or more, has employed enhanced safety protocols for horses competing in such races. And we will have plenty of individuals on hand working that day. Recently, I was approached by a prominent New York horse owner who inquired what the industry had done in the nearly 3 years since the December 2011 release of the task force on the New York Task Force on Retired Thoroughbreds. This report here was released. The task force was created a number of years ago by state legislative action to identify productive uses for retired racehorses and increase the number available of such uses. While the main recommendation of the report, which was public funding of retirement programs from DLT revenue, has not been realized, There were a number of other recommendations that, if implemented, could assist in addressing this important issue. And given the Commission's mission statement, I think it's appropriate to call for industry stakeholders to gather in Saratoga late this summer to discuss what has been done regarding retired racehorses and what we as interested parties can do to focus on this important issue. So we're going to try to pull together an event for probably in late August. Finally, we are now some 5 months from the Gaming Facility Location Board's public announcement of recommended parties for a commercial casino license, and are just short of 3 months since the release of the Gaming Facility Location Board's report and findings. The New York State Police have advised that they are in the final stages of information gathering relative to the 3 applicants. This will then enable the State Police to construct a cumulative background report from which the commissioners may base their suitability determination. Staff is looking to complete draft regulations regarding entity and principal occupational licensing for your consideration, so that these regulations may be in place contemporaneous with the receipt of state police materials, thus enabling your prompt consideration of licensing matters. To that end, later this week, I may be contacting you all to seek dates for the conduct of a special meeting of the Commission for rulemaking purposes. And with that, back to you, Mr. Cry.
Well, thank you, Rob. So the first item up for business is rulemaking. New York State Racing and Parimutuel Wagering Breeding Law 104.19 authorized the Commission to promulgate rules and regulations that deem necessary to carry out its responsibilities. To that regard, the Commission will, from time to time, promulgate rules and amendments pursuant to the State Administrative Procedure Act. Today, we have 2 rulemaking items for consideration. Rob, will you please outline the first one?
Thank you. Item 4A regards rules pertaining to gaming facility requests for application and gaming facility license application. Specifically, on March 31st, 2014, the Commission promulgated emergency rules prescribing both forms for the request for applications to develop and operate a gaming facility and several forms necessary to consider and process applications for gaming facility licenses. By publication in the State Register on July 16th, 2014, September 10th, 2014, November 12th, 2014, January 7th, 2015, and again on March 4th, 2015, the Commission extended the emergency adoption. This present emergency rule will expire on June 14th, 2015. Accordingly, for Commission consideration is a readoption of Part 5300 as an emergency rule, with such readoption to be filed with the Department of State prior to the expiration of the current emergency rules. The text of the rules have not changed since the initial emergency adoption on March 31st, 2014. While the public comment period has expired and no public comments were received, permanent adoption of this rule will be considered when the Commission has before it the broad set of commercial casino regulations that, as I mentioned, are still being crafted. Commission staff recommends readoption of this emergency rule.
Commissioners, are there any questions on the readoption of rules pertaining to the gaming facility request and facility license applications, with such readoptions to be filed with the Department of State prior to the expiration of the current emergency rule?
No, but I'll move the adoption.
Mercifully, thank you. Second. I'm in the affirmative.
Could I just ask a quick question, Rob?
Sure.
Is there anything you can tell us to give us a very, very short update on the RFA request application
For the fourth license, sure. We're right now in the midst of waiting on applicants to return the information. They are due, I believe, on July 2nd? July 6th, excuse me. They're due on July 6th. So right now we're in a dead period where there's no interaction between the applicants and they're working on responses. It's my understanding that there are a couple of interested parties that are still considering applying. One new and one that had previously applied.
Excellent, thank you.
Great. Rob, there's another rulemaking matter for consideration?
Yes, sir. This is item 4B for commission consideration is a draft regulation allowing for the introduction of a new wager type for the lottery division's numbers and win 4 draw games. The division's regulations presently set forth existing wager types for each of those games, and the division would like to introduce a new wager type called close enough. In a close enough wager, each digit must match or be within one number greater or less than the corresponding digit selected in a drawing. These new wagers are designed for players who might be attracted to the chance of winning a smaller prize for near wins. Ideally, the division intends to introduce this feature in late August, once reprogramming of lottery systems has been completed and tested. Similar wagers to this are performing well in Missouri, North Carolina, Michigan, and Florida. Thus, the division anticipates that the introduction of these new wager types would increase ticket sales for numbers and win 4 games as well, and it provide additional aid to education for the current fiscal year and future fiscal years. Consistent with other existing provisions, this proposed rule also provides for future flexibility by allowing certain modifications or terminations, so long as any such changes are timely communicated to the public on the lottery's website. Staff recommends that the commission authorize a proposal of this rulemaking.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on with it, I just want to make a clarification, and I hope the clarification is correct. I thought there was a conflict in the description memo with respect to the language of the rule. I asked Council Burns about that. We agreed that the rule language was correct as stated, even though there was a conflict with the covering memo, and that it's the rule language we're voting on. Is that correct, Ed?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay.
And also to clarify too, since May 21st, staff has made a number of other more technical corrections to the rule, adding prize structure and odds consistent with the way other lottery games are described. And I've circulated that to the commissioners for their consideration, and that revised text should be the text that you vote on.
Is your normal meticulous nature been replaced by the name of the game?
Very nice.
Fair enough. Anyways, with that all being said, is there any other questions? All right. Do I have a motion? So move. Second. Any nays? 5 yeses. The motion carries. Rob, will you please call the next item?
The next item on the agenda regards adjudications. The commission has 2 hearing officer reports for actually 2 items for consideration today. The first is in the matter of Graham Lewis. On January 28, 2015, the commission issued its findings and order affirming the denial of a license to Graham Lewis as a harness racing trainer and driver. The denial was based on the grounds that Mr. Lewis's experience, character, and general fitness are such that his participation in racing or related activities would be inconsistent with the public interest, convenience, or necessity, or with the best interests of racing generally. Mr. Lewis filed a request that the commission reopen his adjudicatory proceeding on the basis of newly discovered evidence, namely a January 30th, 2015 decision and order issued by the Massachusetts Gaming Commission favorable to Mr. Lewis. At a meeting conducted pursuant to the judicial or quasi-judicial proceedings exemption of the New York Public Officers Law, Section 108.1, the commission considered this matter.
The commission did consider this matter and deliberated, and we had a vote of 5-0 to sustain the hearing officer's report.
Just to clarify, this is to reject Mr. Lewis's request for
To
reconsideration.
reject his request.
Just for purposes of the minutes. Thank you. On March 26, 2014, lottery agent First Choice Food Market 046847 was issued a notice of license suspension for participation in conduct prejudicial to public confidence in the state lottery pending investigation of criminal allegations regarding conduct occurring on the agent's premises. Under commission lottery procedure, this is Suspension notice converts to a revocation unless a hearing is requested. A requested hearing was conducted on March 25th and March 30th of this year. The hearing officer's report and recommendation were delivered to the Commission Secretary on May 6th. The hearing officer recommended that the license suspension be upheld until a revocation is finalized. At a meeting conducted pursuant to the judicial or quasi-judicial proceedings exemption of the New York Public Officers Law, Section 108.1, the Commission considered this matter.
The commission did duly deliberate and consider this matter. And again, it was 5-0 to uphold the hearing officer's reports and recommendations. So with that, we'll move on to the next item, the Racing Fan Advisory Council. I think they're here today to present to us. They're
on the phone.
Oh, they're on the phone, I'm sorry. Rob, would you please establish some background for record and purpose?
Certainly. In September 2011, the New York State Racing and Wagering Board formally created the Racing Fan Advisory Council to provide input and advice to the board, now the Commission, on horse racing and wagering matters in New York State. Upon establishment, the Commission explicitly continued the Council's existence. Members of the Council are required to be long-term horse racing fans selected on their involvement, interest, knowledge, and devotion to the sport. The Council has 5 members, 3 appointed by the Commission Chairman and 2 appointed by the chairs of the Senate Committee on Racing, Gaming, and Wagering and the Assembly Committee on Racing and Wagering. As outlined in the Establishment Directive, the Council's mission is to grow the fan base related to the sport of horse racing by, among other things, recommending procedures to ensure that the opinion of the fan is a central part of the regulation of horse racing and advising the Commission on issues related to the horse racing and wagering, advising the Commission on appropriate actions to encourage fan attendance and wagering at the state's thoroughbred and harness racetracks and the state's off-track betting corporations, recommending changes to the rules to the Commission and to the laws affecting horse racing, and to prepare an annual report regarding the operation of the state's thoroughbred and harness racetracks and the state's off-track betting corporations.
Today the members of the council will present their annual report. At this time, I'd like to recognize the council's chairman, Patrick Connors, who is with us via telephone. Patrick, you there?
Thank you very much. I also like to recognize the other members of the council. On the line, we have Michael Amo, who is also the chair and co-founder of Thoroughfan, which is the largest horse racing fan group in the country. We also have Alan Carter, the historian at the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. Kelly Young, who is the Deputy Director of Public Policy for the New York Farm Bureau. And Kelly is really our point person on harness racing. And then we have Michael Mills, the Village Administrator of the Village of Elmsford. I'm happy to present the report that we worked on during the 2014 year. There are essentially 2 major items in the report that I'd like to discuss. One deals with steward transparency, and the other one deals with fan feedback on Belmont Stakes Day and the letter that we issued last year. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Michael Amo to address issues of steward transparency. And I would just note that we considered these during last year, but the Breeders' Cup race where Bayern won after an inquiry based on some conduct at the start of the race that knocked out Shared Belief and Moreno, 2 horses that at least had an arguable chance in the race, I think highlighted the importance of steward transparency for the sport and for New York State. Michael Amo, could you speak to this?
Michael, if you're there, you're got to unmute your line. He was there a minute ago.
You coming out now?
There you are. We got you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Pat, and honorable members of the Gaming Commission. With me on this presentation, I'll have Mike Mills and Kelly Young, who will fill in on some of the respective issues. In March of last year, the Commission asked us to look into the issues of steward transparency and to make some recommendations to you. Since then, we've been working with the Commission staff to collect information on how stewards and presiding judges rule and identify how information is made public at tracks across the country. Results both in and beyond New York State were varied, and we believe decisions made in the booth should be issued to the public in a clear and concise, consistent manner. Transparency starts, we believe, with education of the fans about the rules that guide these decisions. We all hear from fans who tell us they can't understand why a particular steward ruled or a particular inquiry ruled a particular way. And most of the time it's because they don't understand the rules. I think maybe this is something that fan education initiative there should be a fan education initiative perhaps by the council. Once fans understand these rules and the logic of how they're applied in any circumstance, we believe confusion about the rules will be minimized. The council believes that the standardized reporting format should be used by all tracks in New York, and we'll begin with the New York Racing Association first, and hopefully then bring on other tracks as we move through the year. The Commission should post the reports weekly on its website with pertinent information, including the names of the stewards for each day, the weather conditions for each day, a detailed description of any stewards' inquiries, claims of foul and/or incidents. Stating whether the stewards' decisions are unanimous or by a majority rule. Statistics on the week's races, including the number of races, starters, and conditions should be reported. List of horses claimed for each day as well. Track handle, including data on certain wagers. Information on any ruling issued each week. Statistics on racing and equine fatalities. And there should be a link to the video replays at each track so you can see exactly what happened. Before we move into the harness component, I'd like to see if any of my colleagues, specifically Mike Mills or anyone else, would like to add to that those comments. Okay, go ahead, Mike, please.
I think you did a fantastic job. The only piece to emphasize a little bit more that we tried to incorporate into the report was more daily information in terms of track conditions changing as well as weather. And I think that's important that fans are able to see that on those reports on a weekly basis.
Thank you. Kelly, would you like to address some of the unique issues regarding harness racing and where we might take this steward transparency issue to the harness side of our industry? Kelly, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute. So we'd like to duplicate this type of report for the harness tracks in the state, and the thoroughbred outline is a great one to start from, but there are some differences with harness racing that we want to tailor to that sport, such as equipment changes. Some of the rules, because of the gate, are complicated to explain, so we want to make sure those are clear for fans. If you're a fan at the track, it's usually easy to find out what happened because it's announced well, typically. But if you are watching via simulcast or if you're looking at a replay or the results after the fact, it's very difficult to understand what happened and what the infraction was and why the judges ruled the way that they did. So we will try to duplicate this from the harness angle, and we're working with the commission staff to do just that.
Thank you, Kelly. I think that sums up our concern. We have a number of other issues that have come up over the year that, following the model, we want to walk before we run. I think we want to begin here and then build on this so it becomes a better model each and every day. And so we really thank the Gaming Commission staff for all the work they put into helping the council get to this point. Pat?
Okay, thank you, Michael. The next major point that we wanted to discuss that's in the report is our letter that we issued last year, approximately a month after the Belmont Stakes was conducted. We've consistently taken the position that the Belmont Stakes is probably the most important day in New York racing because it's our chance to attract new fans to the sport that don't go through the gates on a regular basis, and the hope has always been that these new fans that might come on Belmont Stakes Day would return to Belmont Park or Aqueduct or Saratoga shortly thereafter, and it's just a great way to increase the fan base. Last year, many of us were present at the event. We spoke to fans during the event and after the event. We read the reporting that took place, and we thought it was necessary to send a letter to Chris Kay, the president and CEO of NYRA, addressing our concerns. We did that. The letter is up on the Gaming Commission's website. We addressed issues such as the transportation problems, issues regarding food and drink, both the pricing and some problems in obtaining food and drink throughout the facility, especially as the day wore on. We addressed issues concerning the crowd and recommended that NYRA consider maximizing attendance at such events. And then we addressed wagering issues and the difficulties that fans experience both at the windows and then through attempting to wager on their Wi-Fi. We sent the letter out, and Chris Kay met with me in early August during the Saratoga meet and acknowledged our concerns and said he was going to address them. Since that time, I think that we've seen, just this morning I got on NYRA's website and saw that they had a press release regarding transportation. They've noted that they're taking steps to increase Wi-Fi capability. They've implemented our recommendation to maximize attendance at the event. So as we sit here now, a little short of 2 weeks out from the event, I think we're pretty happy as a group with NYRA's response to our concerns addressed in the letter, and we hope that the 2015 running of the Belmont Stakes will be a much smoother affair. There are a couple of other items in our report that I thought I'd mention, and let me turn it over to Kelly Young for a moment to address the statewide plan that we had discussed to retain and attract racing fans over the next 10 years.
So one of the things the council has discussed and grown concerned about is developing a plan so that racing fans still have an important role in this state, and that racing in particular has a recognized role that fans can identify with. Obviously, the landscape for gaming is changing with new full-scale casinos coming in. Slot machines have been on our racetrack, some of them for about 10 years, and there's really a lot shifting in New York State right now, and the race fan would be easy to be lost in that shuffle. So we're recommending that there be a careful look at how to take care of the race fan over the next 10 years by policymakers in the state that are engaged in racing, so that we can make sure those live racing fans continue to be cultivated and hopefully expanded. Thank you.
The other item we mentioned in our report, and I think it's fairly timely given what's going on now with plans to change the physical plan at Saratoga Racecourse. We requested that any track in New York State considering to make changes to the physical plan that could impact on the fans' experience consult with the council first so we can ascertain the concerns of the fan. We've seen this in all sorts of different times over the last 5 or 6 years with the changes made to Aqueduct, changes made to Saratoga and the paddock, and the limitation of the fans' ability to access the paddock now with the various things around the paddock. And we're going to see it with the proposed plan to add the addition to Saratoga Race Course. And then finally, we also urged NYRA to re-examine its pricing policy. And we note that if NYRA believes that it must charge more for admission and seating, we recommend that they seriously consider adding value to that cost. And some examples we gave would be a betting voucher of some sort or a food voucher of some sort to just have the fan experience improved and make the fan feel that if they're paying extra money to go into the track, that there's added value to that charge for admission. I think that's about it from our end. I wanted to thank the members of the council for all their hard work during the year, and I also wanted to thank Lee Park for his invaluable assistance in helping us out at several junctures throughout the year. I think we all agree that we couldn't do this without Lee's help.
Thanks.
Well, I agree, Lee's the man. So, one of the things we've talked about, Rob, is, or we've discussed a little bit, was the stewards' reports. And do we have any developments on those?
Yeah, actually, today with us, we have Ron Okram, who's the director of the Division of Horse Racing and Pari-Mutuel Wagering. He and his staff have been working on this initiative and have made some rather substantial advances. Like Ron, if you would, to address Commissioner's question.
Thank you. I'm pleased to report to the members that the staff at the Gaming Commission's Division of Horse Racing and Pari-Mutuel Wagering, based on a recommendation provided by the New York Racing Fan Advisory Council, will today begin posting online weekly reports from Belmont. While NYRA is the first track to be reported weekly, it is the Commission's goal to have such weekly reports for all tracks. We continue to work with the other track stewards and presiding judges to create similar reporting procedures and mechanisms that will eventually provide online weekly reports for all 7 harness tracks and the 2 thoroughbred operators. As you know, this initiative was first discussed in March of 2014 when Gaming Commissioner Crotty cited the controversial disqualification of a winning horse at Gulfstream Park as an example of why racing fans need more information on how decisions are reached in the steward's booth. There is no doubt that providing such information on how the stewards make a specific decision serves to further the integrity of New York horse racing. The Commission, as reported back then, spent considerable time in reviewing such report with the goal of providing more information that racing fans wanted. It was also important that such information be presented in a format that fans could easily read and access. In designing the system, we examined a few states that offer such reports. We specifically looked at California, Delaware, and Washington that have stewards reports that are available on their respective commission websites. We also met with the stewards at both NYRA and Finger Lakes and discussed with them the initiative and sought their thoughts and recommendations. We were specifically interested in their feedback and opinions on not just requiring such information, but how such information could be provided in the least restrictive manner. In this regard, the Stewards Corner at NYRA served as a foundation for this initiative. The site provided a basic explanation of what the stewards decided after an inquiry had been posted. The weekly report initiative builds on that process by providing additional information that includes both summary and who the steward spoke with in reviewing the facts to decide on an inquiry. The reports not only provides the steward information, but also statistics on the prior week's races, including number of races, starters, conditions, list of horses claimed each day and their names, and by who, wagering data, including handled by wagering option, information on any ruling issues each week, statistics on racing equine fatalities, and links to video replay and results to each day's races are provided in the report. We expect that Finger Lakes will be up shortly also. We did have some challenges in creating the system, specifically procedures in capturing the data electronically and hardware upgrades that needed to occur that would enable our stewards to provide this information back to Schenectady. Once those were addressed, we turned our attention to style. In this regard, once information is sent to Schenectady, a member of the Division of Horse Racing, John Kukas, who has been assigned as the project editor, reviews the data and prepares the report. Providing an editor will, when the other tracks come online, ensure the reports are consistent in both style and format. We noticed in our review and design of the reports that one state provided weekly reports but they were not consistent in either style or format. This made finding and accessing information difficult. We felt that a key element to the report was the need to build a reporting structure that would be both uniform and consistent for all stewards and presiding judges to follow, and the fans to find easy to access and obtain the information sought, regardless of track. We believe with John serving as the editor of the report, we'll achieve those goals. We are excited about this new initiative and thank the Racing Fan Advisory Council for their contributions. I would also note that while we will eventually include all tracks, we will continue to listen, add information where appropriate, and look to further recommendations on what works and what may not work in providing racing fans these reports. The reports can be found at www.gaming.ny.gov under the tab Horse Racing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the fan council, Patrick, Michael, Kelly, and Alan, for their hard work on this report and useful dialogue that we have going forward. So thank you for that. Is there any new business? Nope. Being none, any old business to consider? Being none, the last item we'll talk about is our next meeting, slated for June 22nd, 2015, in Manhattan, which would be great.
Throw it out there.
It's not, it's just, I don't know where, I'm not available that day, I'm traveling.
It's actually gonna be a little tricky for me too. I'm not supposed to be here, but we'll figure something out.
All right, just make sure we have.
As a general sense, if you have conflicts with the anticipated date, just work through Kristen, she'll circulate other dates, alternatives, et cetera.
Yeah,
The two of you aren't gonna be around, so
I'm trying to work it out. I'm not supposed to be here that day.
myself, I don't know yet, so I should be, but I don't know for sure.
Would a week earlier be better?
I don't know, at this moment, I couldn't speak to it.
Fair enough.
Might-
Yeah,
All right, we'll
we
talk
can-
about it later.
Yeah, the concept, yes.
Yeah, okay, I mean, these graduations and stuff, but Bob, you were also gonna talk a little bit about maybe a meeting prior to that?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're in a position of trying to finalize the occupational and the entity licensing rules. When we get that in a position where we think it's appropriate, we will circulate it amongst you guys and give you plenty of time to appropriately review and digest that. And then I would like to have a special meeting, if we could, to consider those rules. So that way,
Most likely, July.
the rules, no,
No,
I
it's a
mean,
meeting.
yeah.
Meeting seems like it's heading for July.
Well, the licensing meeting would be at that point, but we need the rules in advance of that. So actually, I would like to get the rules to you probably by the end of this week,
Right.
and then giving you another week to review that, get around to you to find out whether we can do a
Just
quicker
keep-
meeting.
just keeping in mind that that week, at
Yep.
the end of June doesn't work.
Well,
Is that meeting around the rules, does it have to be face-to-face, or can we do that?
It would have to be a public meeting.
Okay.
So, but we could do it by video conference as we've done in past ones.
Yeah. All right, we'll figure it out. Any other items for consideration? All right, hearing none, this concludes this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great job, John.
Thank you.
John, that was really.